today that you brought here to, and that we showed.
So what are we gonna, I guess we should each one of us stand up and introduce ourselves, and these are outside voices.
Sure. Okay. I'm Andrew Allison. I did the installation that's kind of like sprawling, has drawings on the walls and things like that. Should I say a little bit more about the sacred, or do you want to wait for that?
Just wait for that.
Just wait for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Made that art.
All right, next up.
Hi, I'm Dafna.
I know. Hello.
Yeah. So I have actually three groups of pieces here. One called Classy, which is next to Sam in the other room. It's a David Heritage. Another group is the IV Ideas, hanging on the wall. And there's another group called Rituals, which is actually stand for FGM, Human Genital Mutilation. And actually I have another piece which spread all over. It's more of a little talisman. So mention it later.
And my piece is right over there. It's called Dances of a New Lake Village.
Very cool. All right.
Hi, I'm Stephen Grebinski, and I have the collages in the lead tunnel over here.
My name's Dyvika. I made the red room, and I worked on the ceiling tiles in the archway with Sandy. This is Puppy.
PJ Zimmerlink. I have a painting and a sculpture in the show for Small Cat.
Hi, I'm Lenore Thomas. I also want to say thanks to Ian and Sam and Keith for putting this show together. It's been a really great experience. My piece is on the back side of this arched wall with all the plastic bags that I brought from my family.
Hi, Julia Betts. My piece is right here with the blocks and the book.
And so, like you said, we're going to start off with a question I was given. So really the main question is sort of, what is the definition of relic, each of you, and how your work relates to sort of like sacred, irrelevant, remnant, the general nature of how objects become transformed by the way we choose to present them. So I guess, like, how did you approach that idea? Who wants to start? Should I pick someone?
I guess it's me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I stand up?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. So with my piece, I'm thinking a lot about memory and how we value our memories and what we choose to take with us to sort of form our narrative. And that becomes a sacred thing for me. I have some pieces in there that are over 10 years old, just little bits that sort of tumble around the studio floor, and I pick them up every now and then and put them in shows as different things. So that, and then also sort of thinking about, like, I've been, my whole life, like, I was like born into a very theological heavy family. My dad's a theologian and a lot of religion in the background. And I've always sort of been trying to like develop my idea of like what a religious experience is, or what a spiritual experience is, away from any specific organized religion. So I'm thinking about the sacred like all the time. So it was fun to be invited to the show because like, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's just my work. So yeah.
Next.
Okay, jumping off of sort of thing, this is so not my work at all. So the opposite of how you're thinking. But so when I was talking to Sam about this, I'd already started thinking about this work, and so I've been making some work related to this, but it's a huge shift in my work. But my mom had passed away in 2014, and I started to, as many of us do, when you clean out somebody's house, you're left with the things that somebody has, that you don't necessarily know about. And I didn't look through that stuff, I just took it and put it away, and dealt with it 5 or 6 years later when I was ready to deal with it. And as I started to open up the boxes that I had, and my sister had some of it, so this is just what I had. It wasn't just what she kept, it was what her parents kept, what her grandparents kept, what her great-grandparents kept. So all of a sudden I had all these things that I didn't know what the story was behind this stuff. And so it was just stuff that people kept in my family that was important to them, but I didn't know why it was important to them. And they didn't have anyone to ask why it was important to them. There was nobody left that would have been connected to those groups of people. So my mom was the only child. So I just started kind of pulling out the things that felt weird or funny or difficult or sad or whatever, that kind of somehow spoke to me in some way, and pulled that aside. And then I'm from the Midwest, I'm from Wisconsin. So I always want people to like, I don't want to share with you, but I kind of don't want to share with you at the same time. So I was trying to think of things, and as I met with, various friends and talking about this, I tried to think about ways I could display them, and that's where the plastic bags came in. Is like, I'm letting you in, but I'm only letting you in so much. And so the things became these sort of sacred elements for me of thinking like, this is my family, and like everything up there is for my family, but I'm only letting you see so much of that family. Like, you can tell it's a letter, but you don't know what the letter says. You can see this, and some of it's funny, like, or weird. There's a tooth in there. I don't even know whose tooth. Like, why does somebody say the tooth? I don't know whose tooth that is, right? Like, it's a human tooth. That's all we know, So for me, that sacred becomes like the family sacred, the sacred of history, the sacred of what we know and don't know, and the sacred of history of something that I want to hold on to, but I don't know. I don't even know what that thing is that I'm holding on to.
I also have a thought about your piece where it kind of looks like when they put like evidence bags, which I don't know if that was, maybe that's just my true crime brain, but yeah, I really like that. Okay. Oh, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. Sorry I was running late, there was traffic. I'm Zach Brown. I did the big boat burial piece on the other side.
And so we're, I should say, since you're here now, basically everyone's just talking about the definition of relic and how it relates to their work and the general nature of how objects become transformed by the way we choose to present them. Just so you know. So, all right, who else wants to go?
Me. Oh, okay. Should I stand up?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So with the Red Room, I was told that it's sort of like an Eastern European thing, maybe mostly Russian, where in like a large, grand, like wealthy household, there would be something called a Red Room. And that's typically where you would keep things like religious icons, family photos, and no one would like enter the room. It was like, this is the Red Room and only these things are allowed in. So with that room, I wanted to focus on the idea of the sacred rather than the relic. And I literally just wanted to paint the room red. Yeah, because it's really jarring, and it gets like it's like a jugular move, something like that. And then beyond that, with the cake and the candle, the message is kind of the pressure of making a big wish once a year. It's like this, what do you call it? A tradition or something. It's tradition, and you only have one a year, and it's got to be good, and you've got to, blow out the candles. It's got to go out. Everything has to happen right. So there's like a lot of pressure involved. So then the message of be careful is like, be careful what you wish for. And then beyond that, there's like a brick and behind the candle blocking the fan, because in the Three Little Pigs, the brick house is the only one that the wolf couldn't blow down. So yeah, when that image came into my head, it all just sort of came together and made sense. With the ceiling tiles on the archway, that was more of like a relic idea. Sam and I have talked a lot about this. The idea of something being not invalid, but
Like obsolete.
obsolete, yeah, and
The
like
idea of covering up
and
It's
these,
a drop ceiling.
the drop ceiling and like
Yeah.
and creating this like veneer, this ugly skin on this formal architecture, this formal shape.
yeah, like over time, things like the wear of things, the wear of the world.
Yes.
I don't know how much further to go on that one. Just that it's like a curse. It's sort of like a curse. It's a relic and it's a curse. It's like a cursed thing that everything else in a place can be a little sky hanging above your head. But staining it was really fun. Well, no, I shouldn't use that word. Different F word. But no, it was torture. And then bending them, you just kind of had to wet them and then form them to the archways.
Did you break a lot before you actually got some to bend, or?
I don't think we broke that many because
Sister spirits.
Because just yeah, yes. What was I gonna say? Are we gonna talk more about how things were made later? Should I-
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then this is Puppy. I've had Puppy since I was 1 year old.
Oh my God.
So sacred little puppy. Thank you.
Perfect. Dafna, did you want?
Yeah, so I have to say, once I heard about this, when you approached me, I just loved it. Just loved this theme, and it kind of, I think it felt right into my alley, just like you. We do have a lot in common.
We do.
So I'm coming from the idea of rituals, which I use a lot in my work, and it's a lot of repetition of the same item, so sometimes you see it. And rituals are strongly, I think, connected to this theme. So specific to my work, what you can see is that the work passing that is in the middle, it's an old style lady parade that speaks about life and death, and speaks also about life and loss. So I think about life as sacred. And I also think about the body as sacred. So you can see from the works, the materiality is very important for me, and it kind of delivers some sense of a body. And I concentrate on the wound that happens from different occasions in the body. So one of the works speaks about rituals that is being performed on women, which is so I'm saying I didn't name it FGM, but it's FGM, which is really a ritual. It's a ritual, and it's and it is a protest to the wounds that have been done to the woman's body in certain countries, in some countries, also in the US, by the way. And the IVIDs are very significant words that also connect to the body in a way of healing, or the wish to heal and nourish the body. Each IV is contained with different objects, which are very significant and sacred. And one of the issues I connect to is wars. And I look at wars as rituals that try to gain control and power, and they cause a lot of damage to the sacred body. And I really like the way my work's connected to Sam and this whole sacred place that architecture was done, which I think it's part of the whole thing, the narrative. And so this is in short, and maybe later on we'll talk some more.
Do you want another baby carriage? Another old baby carriage?
Yes, I do.
I know, obviously.
I'm taking it.
I'm not using it. Who wants to go next?
You can go.
Yeah, get up.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Nick Daniels, and I have a dance company based here in Pittsburgh called the Dana Lubin Ensemble, which stands for Dancers Against Normal Actions. The reason why I like to start off with that is because throughout the pandemic, I had nowhere to move, and it was really something that I had to think about of how can my work exist, and what can I do? What shall I do? I will keep saying. And so I have all these dances because I've been doing this for over 30 years. To give you a little bit of, I graduated from Slippery Rock University as the first dance major to graduate from there in 1991. Notice I said 1991. 1993 was the invention of the internet. So I didn't have cell phones. I didn't have any of that computer stuff. It was analog computers, and I was fascinated by that. And moving into the digital age, I became even more fascinated with that. With that being said, I took a long hiatus. My parents both passed away. Life changed. I changed. I was transitioning from male to female, and life just kind of came through. And in 2016, I had a friend who encouraged me to start again with the dance company. But with that dance company, I realized that I had this whole visual art component to focus on and think about, because all my work is multimedia and multidimensional. So this piece here is Folk Dances of the Nucleic Village, and it is a 47-minute long dance work. And it's this, the reliance on material things and making those material things sacred. What's sacred to some is not sacred to others, and maybe even looked down upon and treated in different ways. So what I did is I took the video and the mask that we wear in the work. There is a mask that I made a bigger mask out of in the corner. That is the original mask that I wore 26 years ago when I first did the piece at Three Rivers Arts Festival. And those became my relics. And it was important to me because I'm always talking about carving out my footprint in the world. And being an artist and being an older artist, it's really important for me to leave a legacy. When people see my work, I want them to say, Nick Daniels. And so that's it. That's the monster back there. There is a music component, which I did. I did all the video work, and I did. I had Sam Smith actually helped a little, good bit with the placement of the work, and my buddy Brad back there kind of helped me with the conception and the bringing the tech together and making sure that I didn't build it 20 feet tall.
I mean,
it's going to eventually be
Go for it.
It's going to be 20 feet tall eventually. But this work has been presented in many different forms. I performed it in Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh Dance Week. It's been performed in Hawaii. It's been performed in Italy as a solo. And there are components. The video component is in Germany right now. And yeah, we'll be able to talk more. I have, anybody has comments or questions, feedback. I'm here.
You got a couple more, wanna step up? Good? Alright, good.
Sure. So I'll talk more in depth about the process that I used to make this piece and the meaning behind it later. But so I do a lot of performances, and then there's artifacts that I have of the performances. There's these performative traces. And so I think of them as relics. And so this is an example of a relic of a performance, of a lived performance over several years. And so I think about it as sacred. I'm thinking about the idea of what is sacred and how to like push the limits of what is sacred. Like, can trash be sacred? Sacred trash? Like the most unprecious thing that most people think of, to me, is actually sacred, just because of the way I used it and the way it was part of my own life. Because I see like this resonance with the objects, the way I interacted with them, and so they become so connected with my own body that and that's part of why I preserve them. I'll go more into it later, but I just wanted to talk about the sacred part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on the piece I was working on, I've been playing with it for a while, this idea, because I was thinking a lot about row your boat. It's something we all grew up with, most of us know. And I've been told by people before that it started off as a Masonic hymn from the Freemasons. Well, it's kind of a like old like secret schools or all these different things. They basically teach stuff through allegory or different stories and stuff like this. And you'd have you know, a more studied person help you decode these things. So it's like row, 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 boat gently down the stream, merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. It's just that kind of like, you know, the uncanniness of reality. And I was thinking about the kind of relic quality of this, like something coming from, you know, an old secret school through a Masonic tradition, and now something that every child knows and it kind of carries on as like a oral relic or spoken word on this thing. And then just thinking about that and the fun thing of like that subtle nature between sleep and dreaming and death. So, you know, it's morbid, but it's also a fun dream. So that's where I'm at with that.
Dreams come true.
By the way, where'd you get your boots?
Oh, thank you. So these boots,
Are they part of that?
no, but they're actually lifts because I'm very insecure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, no, my husband's looking for a pair of Cuban heels, so I'm like, those are
I'll send you the link.
Okay. All right, and all right, thanks to you two. Want to fight it out?
We had one go around for doing the show, and I wanted to put something else in, and I bailed on it because I couldn't pin it down. Fortunately, Sam came back at me and saw something in my work for this show that I hadn't thought about. Doesn't mean I disagree with him. I think it's there. But I think simply put, most succinctly for me, is I see the sacred and the relic and those kind of things in my life as objects. And I'm an object maker. That's the way I view the world. So simply put, that's basically it. It's the object that's generated by the artist. For me, as the artist, I shouldn't speak. I don't even speak for other people. When Sam asked me to do these pieces, it actually gave me time to reflect on how the subject of the show, how those pieces for the subject of the show fit in, but also how my process fits in. So I think my process is actually as big a part of me making a sacred, relic for myself, and it's often a relic because it's, I have an animosity towards my work that I end up basically trying to destroy the subject matter in it. So, yeah, I think that's enough around what we talk about. But that's basically it for me. It's really based around the object.
So if somebody came in and destroyed your work, you'd be like, that's right. That's what I want.
Oh,
They couldn't do it like you though.
Yeah. All right, here's the last one.
Last. So something that I think about with relics and a lot of my work is it's made out of like absolute leftovers and trying to find meaning in like the absolute smallest piece of detail, just sort of like leftovers from an event. And even like, okay, relics in a dictionary or in the spooky church up on Troy Hill, they will have like, oh, this is a piece of this thing that someone else had once, now it's inside of this glass dome. And just trying to like divine meaning out of like the smallest things. So that's sort of what I was thinking with this wallpaper pieces and a lot of other sort of like found footage that I have is sort of like, okay, this is sort of, what does this say about this person, the sort of choices they had? Like how can we sort of connect back to this history that we really can't get back to? And then there's sort of like a little bit of a mystery that I sort of want to preserve because these are sort of, I feel like I collaborate with these sort of like artifacts a little bit, and eventually it'll be someone else's turn with them.
Oh, okay.
I don't get to say what happens.
Okay. Hey, that's okay. Well, I have some questions. And actually, Julia put some of this earlier, which I thought was perfect. So kind of what I was wondering was, did this show make any of you think differently about your practice or approach to art making? Did it challenge you? Like, was there anything that you went into it and said, okay, I want to do something a little different, or oh, my own practice really fits into this theme really well? I guess, like, what was your whole process coming into the show?
I guess I will say that it really just tied the whole room together, literally. Be careful what you wish for. You want an art show? Here you go. Now you gotta do it. Figure it out.
So you got an assignment, and you said, okay.
Yeah, now you gotta do it or else.
I like that. I need a deadline, so I very much drive with that.
It was a deadline.
Did anyone else feel kind of like,
I think there's a process that happened here that was very special. I think I really shared it and say your opinion, which was actually the way the curator worked. And this is a really big show. There's lots of participants.
like 37 artists, is that what you said?
So for a group show, I thought it was fantastic, new, unusual, and for me, very special, how they approach each and every one to accommodate and think together, how do you want to alter your work, how do you want to approach it, how do you want your work to be seen, and it makes the art grow more, in my opinion. Also the way they transform the whole place.
Yeah, definitely.
They actually create separate places.
Yeah.
And each separate place has internal dialogue between the art and the pieces. Some of them re-altered into art. And it creates narratives in each place. And this is how I feel anyway with my work. So that there's a narrative going on there that developed, and it's a curatorial work. So I think the curator worked like artists and like architectures, and they create a narrative in each space, which until the whole works together, and it's beautiful. You don't need even to have a conversation. You come and you feel how they work with one another, and you feel the special space within this space. I mean, I've never seen space gallery like
Yeah. Well, were any of you in communication with each other throughout the show? I know that you worked with some artists, obviously, but I don't know like how closely you work together.
I helped build some of it,
Okay.
right? I was here the whole time throughout the whole build out.
I think most of the communication between the artists in the beginning, before the pandemic, we had kind of like a meet and greet, kind of just to go through like the process and kind of give our whole like workup of what we were thinking of when we sat down like almost 2 years ago, just to try to like bring these ideas together and really kind of question what's sacred, and not necessarily like where you might directly gain that from a first glance at a work, but also like including process and ritual, and also what might cross over. Like we have so many works here from so many artists, so many talented people, and we have crossover, which is just wonderful. And it's not to shy away from like, oh, there are 2 birthday cakes, there are 2 canoes, but like it's why does that cross over? Why do we have that? And like what do we want to work toward to see what's sacred? Like what does everybody think? Like how can we like cast out this net and try to kind of rein in or kind of like pull in at these experiences and look at
The aesthetic of the show is defined by recursive questioning.
Okay.
It's creating a content. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
And because it was so important to do that. And but I don't think I'm not going to talk much more. But it was about creating a situation where like sort of like Duchamp's like the idea was, okay, going forward post urinal, art is that which challenges the definition of art. So in this situation was the form is, in my mind, the form is how do we expand the question. So by making the question harder and harder to answer, it becomes its own form. It's both like recursively developing its form, but becoming increasingly elusive and ambiguous. And that for me is important because I feel like art is that which words do not communicate enough. And so this was an important opportunity to develop that form within the space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just looking around, and just touching on what some of you said, I think there is also this idea of attachment, ascribing value or meaning to something, whether or not that's sacred or you can't really describe what that is, and just thinking about how things used to have value and meaning that don't anymore. Like I think about, I found like some old notes from college and how those used to be so important to me, and now they're just sitting up in my attic gathering dust. But there was a time when those are super important and super valuable to me. So I don't know, I think like anyone coming in here can think about something like that and really consider the meaning of, why did this thing have value at one point? Why does it not now? So like, in general, like, what does that mean for something to be sacred? What does it mean for something to be relevant to your life? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anybody else wanted to talk about the process a little bit more and how it changed if it changed your approach.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of sacred things they can either be negative or positive. So when you use the word sacred, a lot of the time you'd think of something like a shiny special object that you want to like preserve and stuff. But sometimes it's turmoil and it's tarnished or something. I don't know, which I like, but whatever. But yeah, I wanted to expand on what Sam was saying. I really love the fact that this show became a tumultuous sacred thing.
When it's like during the
Are you sure that's not Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not sure.
We're back.
I don't know what it is. But yeah, like we just wanted to have a show, and we got it, and then it became turmoil. But yeah, I like that idea of something can either be positive or negative, depending on different circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, did anyone else wanna talk about sort of their process going into this, or?
I can touch on that a little
Please
bit.
do, absolutely.
So as I said, I am a dance artist, a movement-based performance artist. So when I talked to Ian about this, I already knew that I wanted dance to be shown in a different way. And I wanted to show dance in a way only the way I see it. And when you look at the video, the main video that's on the main monitor, you'll see that there's shadows being cast. That's not from anything that I did.
Oh.
It was literally when we filmed it, and I took and I started to filtrate the color out of it and do other things. I realized that my dancers were dancing out of their bodies.
Oh,
They should look like ghosts.
Yes.
that is very eerie, I like that.
Yeah, and so my process was just to really make something that was ugly beautiful, and that was to really just focus on the way I see things and the way folk dances relates to this theme of things being ritualistic and sacred.
Yeah.
And also with the gas mask and everything, also the pandemic and how we have these masks and they are now becoming relics. You're seeing them everywhere. And so the process for me was just to really focus on bringing that 47-minute dance to a different life, breathing a new life into it, and having the relics be the focus.
Right. Well, that's interesting too, because, and I was saying this to Keith earlier, is that, you know, because you started playing this in 2019, like before everything fell apart. So I think what's interesting is that, to me, I mean, especially because I'm an arts critic, like I'm used to going to galleries and museums and things, and when I couldn't do that, it was, you know, obviously heartbreaking and distressing, just not being able to go anywhere, not being able to do what I love. And I think being in person and being in front of a physical object has now taken on, like just being able to do that has taken on a bigger meaning. I don't know if you were thinking about that over the course of, you know, planning for the show and preparing for the show. I don't know, but to me, I mean, that's the biggest thing walking into this and seeing everything. It's like, oh, I'm here. This is in front of me. It's, you know, I can touch. Oh, I can't touch it because obviously you're not going to touch the art. But but I know it's safe if I can't touch it. But yeah, it's in front of me, and I think that's maybe when you're thinking about a sacred thing, it's like even just the idea of like being able to go out and experience this is sacred. But I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of how I'm thinking about it. But I don't know. Like the meaning probably changed from like the beginning to now, just because we had this huge catastrophic event.
It felt like that was like a real discipline for I think a lot of us involved in it, both as curators and as artists, because there was there was this compulsion to adapt to it or to maybe even compromise from the original intention of the show given the context. And yeah, I think that I don't think that we really changed all that much, and I think that it still managed to work.
Yeah, that's fine.
There were a few artists who adapted what they did, and I think it all felt very organic.
Okay.
But it was a super like philosophically, it felt very strange as curators because it was like what do we do? Like, is everybody going to want to change their thing and this and that? And it was a really fascinating experience. You know, like not knowing if the show was going to happen, not knowing if we're ever going to leave our houses, not knowing if we should encourage people to work on their projects while they're inside. You know?
Right.
It was so weird. It was so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I was on Keith, this is like just trying to review anything online, I was like, I can't do it. It's just not, I can't get any idea of like the size or the texture, like I can't really make a connection with it. So just like this, like just overall, I think it's interesting to look at it from that angle too, maybe, just as a, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I feel like I should say something because I think I'm doing a disservice to my work with the context that's coming in. 'Cause
Okay.
it's like right in the middle of the two questions, which is like, in my piece, there's like a cereal box on a table, and those pieces, the cereal box pieces that I'm thinking about come out of like thinking about memories as a child and like specific traumas and how you turn it in like these mundane things like eating cereal on Saturday morning, they turn into a religious experience because in extreme forms of like isolation, because I was like homeschooled and I never got out very much, and I think that like I turned that into like my religious experience. Like that specific thing has been referenced my entire life of like having that time that was special, that felt like a performance. And how special it really is to get into a space and share things with human beings. Because I felt like I waited like 20 years to like see people actually and like do that whole thing. And so like through this experience, maybe the process of being isolated during COVID is like, maybe I went back to that space a little bit more of thinking like how important it is to share things with people and how special that is, and it doesn't necessarily happen. And so to actually bring that in here is special.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, this might be a little, but you mentioned a lot of description, but a lot of your art is based on your experience with night terrors.
Oh yeah.
Is that at all?
Yeah, I mean that was a part of like and trying to process that, and the reason I started making art is being like, well, I just saw this thing that feels real and like it creates this extreme form of like dread that is like taking over my life, and then when you try to talk to somebody about it, it's like, oh, that's just in your head, and so like, well, I gotta like process this in some way. So,
Right.
yeah, that's how I started making stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I was just interested.
Yeah. Thanks.
I mean, did anyone else want to talk about? Well, you can either talk about your process, or you can kind of talk about like how it changed, or because of COVID, or.
I think it's a lot of pressure, and then with the pandemic and all the restrictions involved, you start like craving that intimacy of being able to do things that you're now not allowed to do. But then you say, oh, I want it, and then all of a sudden you're able to do these things, and it's like, oh, I forgot I have anxiety. So then you go back and stuff.
I think one of the things too, like my piece was it was really close to being done when I had Sam come see it in my studio before.
The
pandemic, it wasn't totally done, but I had it like installed, a version of it installed, and so I was really excited. I was like, this is something new for me, and people are gonna see it, then this happened, and then it's just, and then the delay, and then more delays.
And then the more delays.
And more delays, right? It's just like, oh my God, and then it's like, is it gonna ever happen? And then it just kind of felt like it might not ever happen, and I'm like, there's just like this, it's not that often that I really want a piece to be seen by people, like that I'm like, you want your work out there, but this time, like, I really felt like this piece needed human interaction more than maybe some of the other work I've done. Like, I really needed other people to see it for it to make sense. So when I came here and I had my studio assistant helping me hang it, I really wanted to be in a different format. And so it was a different, like for me, the process was also working with her to think about how it was going to go up in a different format. So I knew there were things I wanted to do, but it was also like, it was interesting because I knew what the pieces were. She didn't know, she didn't know. She knew what they were aesthetically. She did not know what they were information wise, you know.
So you show her a tooth and you're like, there you go.
I mean, I don't even know what the tooth is. It's like, but it's just, you know, just like, you know, stuff like, here's this letter, so I don't explain, you know, what this letter is, or what this other thing is, you know, so it's like, you know, or even like the war rations, you know, which wouldn't necessarily mean anything. They don't really mean anything to me, you know, so there's all this stuff going on, and so it's really interesting that I'm not, and I believe you were both working on the ceiling at the time. And so it's sort of interesting, like, conversation of like how I'm gonna get this piece up in a way that's both aesthetically interesting to me, but also has some sort of meaning as people would move around it visually. To look at, you know, kind of like somehow they're connecting something to the work. Without knowing, like, you don't know the stuff, but you want to know the stuff, and like, how do I get people to kind of stay in it? You know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying. You don't even know the background of some of these. You phoned them or what was done with them, and just forming an attachment to something where you don't even really know why you're forming an attachment.
I mean, I know what people, like, I know who the people are.
Yeah.
But I didn't know my great grandparents or my great grandparents actually. And some of it's really hard. Like there's letters, there's divorce letters, and other things that are up in there that are really hard. That like it's going to your point of like the sacred is painful or the sacred is difficult. You know, so these letters, they are sacred, but they're painful.
It's really intimate.
They're super intimate.
And I like what you said about like how something changes when it's seen by someone else. It's sort of like was it like a physics idea where like
Schrodinger's cat.
I knew I was gonna ask. What is Schrodinger's cat? Oh wait, no, it's a different
It's a
thing.
Heisenberg uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
So when you look at something, it changes.
You got really exciting.
So like this wall behind me is different, and now I look at it, and now it's different because I looked at it. So like thinking about how this intimate thing is going to be seen by all these strangers, like how do you get ready for a party at your house with 1,000 people you don't know? Like they're going to see my bathroom. What do you do?
That's about the concerns I'm student.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go in your cabinet a little bit.
That's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think it's, well, I mean, I think that's just an overall question with art and how does the meaning change from the artist to the person viewing it.
Yeah.
And, how, even if somebody came to you and said, well, I looked at this and here's what I thought about it, and maybe that wasn't something that you even thought of.
It's like, did you ever say something and you didn't know whether it was true or not until you said it? Like if you tell someone I love you and it's like, oh wait, I didn't feel that.
I think it's just like
Well, I was just asking if anyone else. Just curious. For a friend.
Well, I mean, like, was for anybody, was this process especially difficult, or maybe just like, or actually maybe the time made it easier, like having more time to work on it, or, I mean, kind of like how.
So the painting that I did, which it's the large kind of square entry stereotypical house. I did that stereotypical suburban house. I did that, I think the first or second week of lockdown.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
But I had the image. That image is taken from a civil defense bulletin pamphlet, and it was the same image, but it was repeated like 6 times, and each time it showed the decrease in radiation over a certain period of time.
Wow. Okay.
But I had held on to that image for a long time and never used it. I really liked it, but I didn't really have a reason to use it. So when we went into lockdown, it seemed like the perfect time to do it because I had the time and I had an image that was concurrent with things that were going on. So that's where the image came from, but it didn't look like that until 2 weeks before I was supposed to drop it off,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, okay.
So, because it was, I consider it a finished painting. Well, I knew it wasn't finished. It was resting, I guess. Let's go with that. It was an image, it was a pretty painting, it was all its things, but getting back to the subject of sacred, I don't know if anybody else has immediate thought when they heard the term sacred, their thought ran through their head was nothing is sacred. The old cliche. Not that I believe that's true, but that immediately runs through my head. And touching back on what I said earlier about destroying the subject, I collect those images. I collect those whether it's a three-dimensional image or a flat image, and use them for a stepping off point. But to touch on the nothing is sacred thing, it's kind of a loop, because initially I pick this image and I find it special for whatever reason. But then after I create the image, I realize that it's just an external image that I chose. It came from somewhere out there and doesn't belong to me, right? And oftentimes my images actually don't belong to me. It's an image like from a pamphlet that I didn't generate originally. And the nothing sacred part comes in, where I'll do a painting like that and it'll sit for a while, and I'll end up trying to destroy the subject matter, like I said earlier. In this particular case, I'm never really happy with a painting or an object unless something drastic happens to it. It takes it out of my control to some degree, because I'm afraid of it being contrived. And I'm a smoker. I admit it. So Sam was like, "Hey, you want to show?" Yeah, I'd love to show that painting, but it smells like cigarettes. Well, so I could possibly happen. I think I texted you and said, "This is either going to be Sam. I read the painting, and it's either going to be one of my best paintings, or it's going to be a complete failure." Something like that, right?
We'll just have to ask people smoking or not.
Yeah. So what I did was I unstretched it and I scrubbed the hell out of it with like Bryoxone and vinegar and all kinds of stuff, and the paint fell off of it. So I had to go back through and glue all the paint back on, and that gave it that control out. That took it away from being that sacred subject matter, destroyed that sacred subject matter, but then it became something. It became that object to me that has its own life and its own history, and kind of became sacred again in some way, because now it's its own thing rather than just a reference to some external source. I hope that made sense.
So you glued the paint back on?
What's that?
You glued the paint back
Yeah, so what happened was the canvas stretched so much that all the paint popped off of it.
Okay.
And it was still attached in a lot of places. And so I basically went back through and heated it up with a heat gun and sprayed it with thinned out PVA. Let it soak under it, heated it with a heat gun so it kind of relaxed, because it dried and all the paint bits had cut.
Oh, yeah.
Heated it with a heat gun until they relaxed, and then just kind of burnished them afternoon.
I just didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either, but it was a great discussion.
You glued it back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the show changing the way you approach your art.
Yeah, well, I mean, up until that point, what I usually do is when I'm working on paintings, I usually take like a 4-inch grinder or 4.5-inch grinder. So I'll work on it and then I'll grind away what I don't like and keep it aggravating down. So in that way, it builds a history into it that I'm only somewhat control of.
Literal grind.
That's one of the reasons why, like, when you show me, sometimes we'll go back and forth and send works. Like I'll do with a lot of people, a lot of artists I know too. And when I see the process, it brings up this idea of the process akin to worship for the artist, right? The ritual of. And even though I'm going to destroy this painting, this thing and I definitely relate to the idea of wanting to make something even in reference to the body, but it can never be that. I can never hold its hand. It can never pat me on the shoulder. It can't. So then what do I have to do is, like, do I destroy this thing or not? But like, in the process of doing it brings up like memory, and it's that process too that like where you create relic, where like we create these things, these relics of our rituals. They're like they're based upon our actions and the remnants of our action. Even though after it's done, it can be cast away. You know, I forget where I heard this. I think it was a horrible quote, but I think it was like Bukowski or something like that. But something like like we as artists are in the business of burying our children, and it's thinking about that and going forward and really thinking about the process that drives each and every one of us and how we kind of lay to worship to either like our worst, like the worst pieces of us or the best parts of us, you know, and yeah.
And it's part of you too, so you're burying yourself.
Yeah.
Family plot.
Yep.
I was thinking about this like maybe a couple of years ago. Is like, what am I actually making? When I sell painting, what's actually going on there? It's like, oh, I'm selling relics of myself, and I was thinking Brittany Spears, like, and they want a piece of me.
Brittany, she's free.
Yay. I feel like we haven't heard a lot from you two, or in you, if you want to know. But did you want to talk a little bit about what kind of like what everybody else is doing?
Yeah.
Would you like to participate with the rest of the
So, let's see, where would we begin? I think I'm like, you're the best neighbor for my little wallpaper boys.
Oh, yeah.
I really like the.
I actually thought that they were together until I saw them.
I showed the wall to my friend, and she was like, I love this thing you did in the middle. I'm like, don't talk to me ever again.
These are crap, but I love this one.
Yeah, it's right though.
No.
That's not what she said.
No.
But, we feel how we feel. So, anyway, I found all of this wallpaper in this set of houses next to this other site that was being torn down. It's like this whole other thing, but I live next to this old, well, it's not now, but I live next to the site of this old gay bathhouse. And as they were tearing it down, that's how I learned what it was. It's like, what is this like club that has this locker that's like covered in boys? This is like,
Where is this?
it's in Uptown, so it's like
Interesting.
at 5th and Forbes, like Jumonville, and streets. That little cute. So as I was like taking all of this stuff, I'm like, oh, good, this is for me. I'm really lucky that I'm coming to Dyvika to find all of this like spooky gay history. But next to that was this other set of duplexes that was being torn down. And I don't know its relationship to that place. But when I went in there, like all of the wallpaper was falling off. Because I think it hadn't been lived in for a very long time. So wallpaper was coming off these huge sheets. And as those were coming off, all the other layers underneath it that had sort of never been put up were also coming off, which was very fun as they were coming off, as I was like dealing with these shards. And they really were like that. There were so many layers of them, I might as well have been a piece of glass. And where different layers were, where different pieces of glue had failed, like the first wallpaper I ever put in the house was like very easy to get to.
Yeah.
And then over here, maybe the third layer came off really easily. And wallpaper used to be very cheap and very popular. And apparently, I don't know how this is true, but it was considered like easier than painting. And there actually weren't that many, like it's the absolute worst thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But you could have like 4 colors of paint or 20,000 kinds of wallpaper. And wallpaper hides everything in like an old house like this was. So it's like, oh, there's a big crack in the wall. We'll just put more wallpaper over there and never see it again. Which I think was also kind of fun, is dealing with this like, this was supposed to solve a problem, and now I see all of your problems. Now that I have like, no one was ever supposed to know any of this was here. because it's like, okay, well, we'll just put more wallpaper up, and then it'll be clean for like a year.
Yeah.
And then we put more up, and then put more up. So I don't know, that sort of metaphor. I don't know where I'm going. But we're getting here. So that's sort of, I was putting these pieces back together. And a lot of it was wallpaper. A lot of the stuff had pictures of houses on it, and that made me kind of sad because it's like, it was a very cute house, but you have pictures of these other houses, like someone likes this more. It's like, there's a picture of you on your own walls, like, oh, it's like, this is this is the ideal house. I don't know, I don't know. I can't say about that. But something else, as I was putting it together, is there's like, the like blank part of the fabric is called the field, and I was just sort of like getting rid of that. So there'd be like pictures of a house, pictures of a house, pictures of a house, and then it just would be like brownness in between. And I sort of just like trying to get just the good stuff.
Okay.
Just the good things up. So I don't know.
Fruit on the bottom. Cherry on top.
I just can't imagine, I mean, we had wallpaper in my house growing up. In fact, we've had wallpaper in my dining room that my great grandparents put up. And it definitely looks like, there's probably lead underneath it. I'm sure my house is full of lead paint, but I grew up in an old farmhouse. But yeah, just the idea of, you know, I think looking at that wallpaper, it was sort of like that wallpaper was like just this burden, like, oh, we have to get rid of this old wallpaper. And now, you know, I kind of miss it. Like going back to my parents' house and not seeing this old wallpaper. I don't know, like when you were talking about that, that's all I could think of was this like old, ugly, I think one had like actually like a Western print on it. It had like cowboys and things. Yeah, and it was just, it's like I kind of miss that. I kind of miss that ugly wallpaper because that had so much more character than just whatever green, like nice calming